Hello and welcome to another Game Dev Log 4 Strange Shores, a desktop fishing game. Now, this week was a little bit different in terms of what was being done, I guess you could say. I was temporarily out of action almost every day for various reasons, one of which being the Welsh ICE game jam that I took part in. This was a fun experience. I had never done a game jam before. I didn't think I was going to be of any use to anyone, but we managed to find a game where my talents could be put to use, as it were. And unlike most game jams, this had a few other alternatives. A, we were paid for it, which is very generous. B, there was talks throughout the entire week, essentially on different topics when it comes to game development. Some of it on the more business side of things, like marketing and pitching for funding, and others like building characters, designing characters. You get the gist. So that was really fun, but unfortunately this obviously meant that I could not do as much work on Strange Shores. But that doesn't mean that there wasn't a lot of discussions between me and James about Strange Shores due to some very interesting news we received on the Thursday. It was on the Thursday. So initially me and James were talking about multiplayer, and I explained that to me, at the very least, most multiplayer games, unless they were story driven and meant to engage couples together, would typically do around about 4 players. That's because it just means that if your friendship group is 3 people, nobody's getting left out. If it's 4 people, perfect. And if it's 5, you can just go, I don't know, complain about the mainstream games as well, as they are often only 4 players. So James got to work on this. Whilst he'd obviously done multiplayer and we tested it and it worked, getting 4 players took a bit more discussion, as we had to figure out where we were going to put the characters and then also how we were going to have 4 people at once without the server deciding it wanted to die due to all the different requests between people. So I left James to this all week. Now, as previously mentioned, we had previously decided that we wanted some form of progression in the game, and this was going to come in the form of background unlocks. So when I did get home from my tiresome days of creating games with people that I'd never met, I did come home and started working on various different backgrounds that we could implement into the game, trying to hit very different scenes to give players the opportunity to fish wherever they felt like they wanted to, once they had unlocked the location. Some of these backgrounds weren't perfect first time, understandably, and needed a little bit of work, but by the end of the week I think we had around 3 different backgrounds that we could implement into the game, fully animated and with opportunities for us to customize them with simple shading tools. Simple shading tools that are a part of Pixel Art Studio. On top of this, I also did some fish here or there, but backgrounds and the game jam were the main priority for me during the week. So this was all great, everything was ticking along nicely, and we also had our Steam page up, so we knew that hopefully things were going to slowly start building. And the wishlist did start building quite nicely. After a few days, we maybe had 100 wishlists, and that really gave us a lot of hope, because at this point, it had almost hit the same amount of wishlists that Find Me I Insist currently has after launch. So there was definitely a bit of interest for Strange Shores. However, come to Thursday, something quite interesting happened. Now, it only took until this point for us to realise that the Steam wishlists are essentially a day behind, and they only update once a day, so you're getting data that's already happened, not a live feed. And so on Thursday, whilst James was slaving away, making progress on the multiplayer for the game, he must have decided to check the wishlists for Strange Shores, and he saw something that quite honestly has changed the development of Strange Shores quite a bit. Within about 5 or 6 days of the Steam page going live, we had now all of a sudden reached 1,500 wishlists. This was a very sharp rise, and the day before it was hovering at about 100 wishlists, but we had now all of a sudden had 1,400 dumped on us out of nowhere. Now, at first this was a glorious bit of news, and both me and James were absolutely thrilled, and we still are. Obviously the game has a bit of interest, that's fantastic to know. But even though we understandably wanted to make a game that would perform well so that we could continue making games and build on our experience and also hopefully one day make bigger games, it also did freak us out a bit, as now the pressure was essentially on to make sure that this game had a successful and comprehensive launch with minimal bugs and also multiplayer working. This part being the thing that is terrifying me the most, potentially. Whilst I have utter faith in James and his abilities, I've seen many a AAA game have an influx of players that they weren't expecting at the start of launch and their servers crash. And so I guess I'm paranoid that we may face the same thing. But that is where we decided to come up with some extra ideas, and the overall news of the wishlist has essentially made us start thinking about how we need to release this game properly, making sure that there is as little issues for the customer as possible, and that we do everything to the best of our ability. So after this news, I continued to bust my So after this news, I continued to work as hard as I possibly could, getting new backgrounds implemented, as well as creating new fish where I could. But there was now also the positive issue of the fact that we were going to have a player base at launch potentially. We did a lot more research, and whilst wish lists aren't necessarily an indication of how a game is going to perform, where you could have maybe wish lists only being 1% of all the people that want to buy your game, or it could potentially be a case that all the people that are going to buy your game are 1% of your wish lists. But at the very least, we knew that there was interest. And after doing a little bit more research, James had discovered exactly where this influx came from. It turns out that a Taiwanese article had been written about the game, and that it clearly has some followers and some reach, because a lot of these people had then gone over and followed the link and wishlisted our game on Steam, which is great news for us. And apparently this article had also made its way over to Japan, or at least some news of our game had, as currently Taiwan and Japan are the two biggest wishlist contributors for our game, and also are visiting our page the most. Turns out there is a massive market in Taiwan and Japan for cozy and fishing games, and so one of the positives that I have taken away from this experience is that if our game gets out there and is marketed properly, unlike a YouTube channel with a very small amount of subscribers, the game does relatively perform well and interests enough players that want to go and play it on release. So we feel incredibly lucky that some individual has gone, found our game and decided to make an article on it. It's given us a lot more confidence in our abilities, and also confidence that Strange Shores is the right game for us to make at the moment. It does, however, also make us shit our pants, but that's neither here nor there. And after many discussions, myself and James have come to many agreements about the current focuses for Strange Shores, what we should be doing, what we're going to do prior to launch, and then what we want to do following launch. Whilst you should never buy a game on the promise of what some developers give you, and we're not going to promise that we are doing this, our current plans are to release the game in its working condition with all of the features that we have promised, and to then go on and support the game for a further year afterwards, adding multiple fish, backgrounds, and any other features that the community deems necessary, if we can. We'd also like to put together a playtest for the game, just to stress test the multiplayer servers, and to generate interest if content creators decide that they want to play the game during that playtest, and that also builds up a bit of organic marketing. Brill. But the predominant factor for the playtest is to ensure that the multiplayer works and that people aren't going to have issues on launch when they have paid for the game. Also, one of the talks at Game Jam was by a man named Hugh. He developed a game called War Sim for the past 10 years that has a bit of a die-hard community, and he was giving a talk specifically on building communities as a game developer. Now, one of the things he talked about was a competition that he ran, and to be honest, I thought that was a brilliant idea, so I nicked it. So therefore, we are currently also looking to run a competition prior to launch, and then potentially for the foreseeable future after launch. But details of that will follow and should be posted here on YouTube for you to engage with, if you'd like. But the premise for that is essentially that any ideas or artwork you wanted to submit into the game is available for you to do so, as long as it's good. Or it's got to hit a fine line, essentially, between like not way worse than my stuff and not way better that it puts me to shame. But that was essentially everything that we did last week. It was a lot of discussions, a lot of hype, a lot of concern. Just a lot of back and forth and a whole range of emotions. But as it currently looks, Strange Shores will be a semi-successful release, with at least people in Taiwan and Japan playing it. So by all means, if you want to keep up to date with the further Strange Shores development logs, or if you want to subscribe so that you can keep in touch with our competition that we are going to run, we are here on YouTube. But you can also join us in Discord, where any further news and events related to our game will also be posted. All of the links for that will be down in the description, and you can also find us on Reddit. We have made a Strange Shores subreddit. So when it comes to playtesting, if anyone has any bugs that they want to mention, or if they want any other further discussions about certain features or concepts for the game, that will be the place to make longer form, not reviews, but opinions known, let's say. So beyond all that, feel free to wishlist us on Steam if Strange Shores is a game that you would like to play, or if you just want to help us out as we are new developers and you want to see us do well. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next week.